It was born from the remnants of a supernova. On the periodic table, it sits at number 22. Yet it bears the name of the Titans from Greek mythology. It's stronger than steel, yet lighter than aluminum. It can bathe in strong acid and remain elegant in the 250 void of deep space. Even more bizarre, to obtain it, American agents at the height of the Cold War disguised their identities to beg their arch-rival, the Soviet Union. This is titanium, a mysterious metal that defined modern aviation, medicine, and even future interstellar civilizations. Today, we aren't talking about dry chemical equations. We're talking about how this finicky noble changed the world. The story of titanium begins in 1791 in Cornwall, England. A clergyman named William Gregor discovered a mysterious black sand by a creek. To his surprise, he found the sand was attracted to magnets and contained a metallic oxide unknown to humanity at the time. Years later, German chemist Martin Heinrich Klaproth named it after the Titans of Greek mythology, implying it possessed the unshakable strength of the gods. But he also lamented, this Titan was locked away by powerful chemical bonds. Its bond with oxygen was so tight that the fires of that era simply couldn't tear them apart. Like the Titans of myth, it was imprisoned deep within the Earth's crust, unable to see the light of day. For the next 100 years, it was merely a term in chemistry textbooks, or ground into a powder to become the whitest pigment on your wall, titanium dioxide. While humanity invented the steam engine, laid railroads, and even fought 2 world wars, true metallic titanium watched from the sidelines. It wasn't until 1940, with the birth of the Kroll process, that this titan, sleeping for a century and a half, finally opened its eyes and crashed into humanity's most frantic era, the Cold War. The story picks up in the late 1950s. The CIA had a wild plan: build a reconnaissance aircraft capable of flying at 3 times the speed of sound. But at Mach 3, air is no longer a flowing breeze. It's a lethal heat wall. The fuselage temperature would soar above 300 degrees. Traditional aluminum alloys would soften like chocolate at those temperatures. Engineer Kelly Johnson realized the only savior was titanium. But the irony was that the world's largest supplier of high-quality titanium ore at the time was America's arch-enemy, the Soviet Union. If the Soviets knew the truth, they wouldn't sell a single gram. So the CIA launched one of history's most complex shopping scams. They registered countless shell companies worldwide, posing as businessmen buying titanium for pizza ovens or civilian pipes. Orders moved from London to Sweden, then to Panama. The Soviets happily counted their US dollars while shipping boatloads of titanium ore out of the country. This metal eventually gathered quietly at the Skunk Works in California. The Soviets personally provided every bone used to build this American spy plane. The plane was built, but it had a quirk. It leaked fuel on the ground. This wasn't a defect. It was a compromise with the limits of physics. Because titanium alloy expands significantly when heated, designers intentionally left gaps. Only at the high temperatures of Mach 3 would the fuselage expand and seal, becoming a leak-proof, perfect machine. When this black beast, 93% titanium alloy, soared into the sky, it wasn't just a limit of speed. It was a victory of intelligence. If steel is a docile farm animal, titanium is an untamed beast. In the machine shop, it is every engineer's nightmare. Why does this dream material make factories crumble during processing? One word, it's finicky. Titanium has a nearly frantic craving for oxygen. Exposed to air, it forms a dense oxide layer on its surface within milliseconds. While this layer ensures it never rusts, it's a disaster for welding. If you weld titanium like steel, it instantly absorbs oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen, becoming as brittle as glass. It would shatter with a light tap. Therefore, Welding titanium must be done in a vacuum chamber filled with pure argon or under specialized shields. Welders must wear gear like astronauts. It's not just welding, it's precision surgery. Most metals, like copper or aluminum, are good conductors of heat, meaning the heat from cutting flies away with the chips. But titanium is different. It's a heat miser. Titanium has extremely poor thermal conductivity, meaning the 1,000-degree heat generated during cutting accumulates entirely at the tip of the tool. This creates a vicious cycle. Higher temperatures wear the tool faster. A duller tool generates more friction heat. If your feed rate is even slightly off, your expensive tool will literally melt onto the part. Factories processing titanium are often filled with the mist of special coolants, used to forcefully cool the beast before it loses its temper. Worst of all, you can't just toss coke into a blast furnace to get titanium like you do with iron. The mainstream Kroll process requires extremely expensive magnesium as a reducing agent, and the process must continue for days in sealed tanks. This makes the production cost of pure titanium over 20 times that of steel. That's why, even though titanium is everywhere on Earth, your phone case rarely uses pure titanium. Because behind every gram of titanium is the frantic consumption of electricity and expensive gases. In our earlier stories, titanium was a Cold War vanguard and a killer of cutting tools. But in the medical world, it holds a completely different title: the biophilic metal. It is one of the very few foreign substances that the human body can fully accept, even treating it as one of its own. Behind this lies a medical miracle that has changed the lives of millions. This miracle began with an accident in 1952. Swedish professor Per-Ingvar Brånemark was studying bone repair in rabbits. To observe blood flow, he implanted a special titanium optical chamber into a rabbit's leg bone. When the experiment ended and he tried to remove the expensive device, he was shocked. The titanium and the bone had actually fused together. Not just stuck, but the bone tissue had completely grown into the microscopic pores of the metal. He tried to force them apart, only to find the bone broke, while the interface between metal and bone remained unmoved. This is the famous phenomenon of osseointegration. Titanium became the first material in history capable of permanently fusing with living tissue. Why doesn't the body reject it? This is thanks to that same oxide layer that gives welders such headaches. When titanium is implanted, the titanium dioxide film on its surface is extremely stable and carries a slight electric charge. This chemical inertness prevents the body's immune cells from recognizing it as a foreign object. To white blood cells, this metal looks like a harmless stone, or even a perfect architectural foundation. Thus, osteoblasts, bone-forming cells, feel safe to take root, spread, and solidify on the titanium surface. Ultimately, this piece of metal is no longer an implant. It becomes a part of your body, a piece of honorary living tissue. Because of titanium, elderly people who lose teeth can chew nuts again. Patients with spinal injuries can stand once more. And athletes who lose limbs in accidents can cross the finish line on titanium alloy prosthetics. It is strong enough to support a person's weight, yet gentle enough to stay with you for decades until the end of life without causing a hint of inflammation. This metal, so finicky in the industrial world, shows the deepest devotion in the biological realm. If wood defined the age of gathering and steel defined the industrial age, then titanium will define humanity's interstellar age. As we attempt to leave our cradle to venture into deep space or dive into the deep sea, we find that the materials we once took pride in appear fragile in extreme environments. Only titanium, this titan awakened from the abyss, stands tall. In the 10,000-meter depths known as inner space, the intense pressure is enough to crush ordinary steel like a soda can. The Soviets once developed a wild weapon, the Alpha-class nuclear submarine. It was the world's first submarine made entirely of titanium alloy. This allowed it to dive to depths unreachable by other subs, and because titanium is non-magnetic, it could perfectly evade torpedoes that detect magnetic fields. It was a phantom of the ocean. Remember how we said titanium is hard to process? Future factories have the answer: 3D printing, additive manufacturing. By melting titanium powder layer by layer with high-energy lasers, we no longer need to struggle with cutting. We can create lightweight lattice structures impossible to make with traditional methods. Now, SpaceX rocket engines and key components of next-generation jet fighters are born in printers. This not only saves expensive raw materials, but also reduces aircraft weight by more than 30%. Titanium is becoming lighter and stronger than ever before. When humanity decides to take root on Mars or establish a base on the Moon, titanium will be our skeletal choice. It can withstand extreme temperature swings on alien worlds without fatigue cracks. It can resist the impact of micrometeorites in thin atmospheres. It ensures that over decades of interstellar travel, the hull remains uncorroded. It is a long-lasting letter from human civilization to the universe. From ignored black sand by a creek in the 18th century to the backbone supporting human life in the 21st, the story of titanium is essentially the story of humanity's relentless pursuit of limits. It is finicky, expensive, and hard to tame, but it is also loyal, resilient, and incorruptible. It can take us 30,000 meters high to overlook the Earth, and it can become the strongest bone in our bodies as we age. Perhaps the Titans never left. They just changed form to protect a civilization that yearns for the stars. Thanks for watching. If you're fascinated by this mysterious metal, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.